Hello and welcome to This Week in Plymouth with Town Manager Derek Brindisi. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host, and Derek, welcome. Glad to have you back this week.
It's great to be back. I've been off for a couple of weeks, so I'm happy to be back here and talking a little bit about what's going on in Plymouth.
Yeah, and it's the perfect time because so much happened this weekend. It was election weekend. Why don't we just dive right into that?
Sure, yeah. So as we all know, it was another competitive race, at least for the select board. We had two winners. John Mahoney was who came in first, and then Charlie Bledsoe, who was running for a re-election campaign, who was just elected in the special election last fall, was re-elected to hold his seat. So looking forward to working both of them. Again, I've only been here for a few months now, so I've had a short exposure and experience with Mr. Bledsoe, and that's been great so far. But during my time back in 15 to 17, I had worked with John. He was on the board back then. So looking forward to re-engaging John and seeing what he'd like to see accomplished for the town of Plymouth.
And looking forward to it myself as a resident. Now tell me, when this week's meeting, Tuesday night, there will be a reorganization of the board, and how does that work for folks who aren't familiar with the process? Yeah,
so that's a good question. So after every election, the following select board meeting, the board reorganizes and they identify who will chair the board for that year and who will be the vice chair for that year. So the process is simple. There's the sitting chairman, in this case, Mr. Quinto. He'll call for nominations. At that time, board members can nominate one of their colleagues to be chair. Once a nomination is made, the second is then called for, so another individual has to second that nomination, and then at that point the chairman will call for a vote. They'll go through that process. That person who then takes over chair then does the same process for vice chair, calls for nominations for vice chair, so on and so forth. And so that happens every year. It's an annual event.
And that happens in the start of the open meeting for tomorrow night, correct?
That's right. That's the first agenda item tomorrow night. That's correct. Yep.
All right, we'll be looking forward to watching.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting because I know, we've had some members who've been on the board for quite a few years now, and I think Mr. Quinto's been chair at least this past year, and so it'll be interesting to see who's going to be the chair moving forward.
Now, there was, in this election, there was a larger turnout than usual. Still want to improve that, but there were more folks who voted for a spring election than typical. And there were a couple of non-binding referendum questions on the ballot. Do you want to talk to those at all?
Yeah, so that's a great question because as folks know, the non-binding questions, so there were 4 non-binding questions that related directly to the form of government. So one question asked whether or not folks would support a mayoral form of government, whether or not folks wanted a manager, representative town meeting form of government. Another question asked if they wanted a council manager form of government. So those questions were asked. Folks had the opportunity to determine, whether or not they would support any one of those forms of government. And I think what we found out, it was mostly evenly split, but leaning more towards a mayoral form of government was one. And then the other one was primarily, I think the majority of the community wants to maintain the existing form of government, which is a manager form of government with representative town meeting.
So that was just information that the select board wanted to gather from the public to offer to the Charter Commission in their work at this time as well.
Yes, exactly. So again, these referendums were non-binding referendums were put on by the board, but again, they were just trying to survey the crowd, survey the community to understand what they think would be an appropriate form of government. As you know, there's been a lot of debate amongst the Charter Commission themselves, the community at large, of whether or not the town should continue to maintain the town manager, town meeting form of government.
And that's something with the Charter Commission. They're still continuing their work. And when is their report due? Is it in the next fall?
So their report, from what I understand, their report is due in September. And then at that point, I believe the next step is to go to town meeting to present their findings. But any changes, because of the way the Charter Review Commission was organized, any changes to the charter would then have to go to the May 2023 annual election.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting because, if you make a few minor changes, then it doesn't cause too many questions to be asked. But I think there's going to be some substantial changes made, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Whether or not those are adopted is really educating the community, because most folks don't understand that there's 5 different forms of government. So I worked for the city of Worcester. That's a Plan E form of government, which is a strong city manager with a city council form of government. That's Plan E. But most folks don't, unless you're raised in that community, you don't really know. So most people in Plymouth, I would imagine that the only form of government they really truly understand is the manager town meeting form of government. So we have to do a good job explaining the changes, the proposed changes in the charter, so folks understand, how those will affect them as voters.
So that will be part of the whole process as well.
I would suspect that the Charter Commission is going to want to put together some type of educational campaign so folks know what they're voting on next May.
And at this point, they're still in the information gathering phase themselves. So they're still talking to other cities and towns and gathering information about different forms of government, and as they continue to do their research to make decisions.
Yeah, so I don't want to speak for the Charter Commission, but from my understanding, I've had an opportunity to present to the Charter Commission some of my experiences. I've now worked with 3 different forms of government, so I've gone in front of them. I've made some recommendations for their consideration. But from what I understand, that the majority of the committee members believe that the existing form of government is the government they want to stay with. So what they're really trying to focus in on is how can we make this form of government more efficient, be more responsive to the needs on a regular basis, not having to wait in essence for just twice a year to make these decisions. And that's the criticism of this form of government, is that you're only meeting in April and you're only meeting in October to make big decisions. So is there a compromise where we can come up with other ideas that will allow us to make decisions in between those 2 town meetings? I think is really what it's going to boil down to.
Okay, so we'll be hearing more, and all of their meetings are cablecast and are available online for people to view, so citizens can follow along as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again,
process.
everything's on. They do the hybrid model, which you can go and meet with them. They meet on Mondays, or just dial in and just listen in. So, like every board and committee that serve the community, they're always open to suggestions and open to public comment. So, folks who are interested in forms of government this is right up their alley.
Now, there was another question over the weekend regarding the woodlot. Do you want to talk a little bit about the results there?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit easy to talk about because that was overwhelming. So as folks probably have noticed the last 4 weeks, the board had decided, they had taken a vote to place another non-binding referendum question on the ballot. And this one asked our community whether or not they support specifically horse racing. And so that was the question. And I believe it was about 88% of our voters had stated they do not support horse racing here in town. So knowing the board, I think, and they've said this publicly, every one of them have said that they will do whatever the will of the voters are. And clearly, this wasn't a 50-50 split. This was clearly a majority of the community does not want horse racing. So I would suspect that we'll see other conversations to be had at the board level to discuss what this means to the town moving forward.
Now, this was the first election day after redistricting, and there was a lot of information out there for people. How did things go on Saturday in general?
That's a great question. So, it was a long day for the town clerk's
Definitely.
office, there's no doubt. Things went relatively smoothly. We had a few hiccups with technology that we had to do some hand counting. But other than that, things went well. Now we have about approximately 180 new town meeting members that we're starting to prepare for.
And they have 30 days to be sworn in, correct?
That's right.
And there'll be an orientation for them coming up.
Yeah, so on June 13th, the town moderator is going to hold a orientation virtually for all of our new town meeting members. So, those folks that are new town meeting members, hopefully they're listening in, I would encourage them to reach out to the town clerk's office. In fact, we're going to probably do some type of PSA. We'll work directly with the moderator on this to be able to identify these new individuals who are not in our database so that we can communicate with them on a regular basis. So, we want to know who they are. We need their contact information. And then at that point, we can then start to disseminate information. They're going to have to get spun up very quickly on the June 21st special town meeting.
Absolutely.
And the 5 articles behind that. So, this is you wouldn't believe it because we're 4 weeks away from the special town meeting. So you think that's a lot of time, but it's really not a lot of time to hit all the milestones as we lead up to town meeting. So it's going to be fast and furious over the next 4 weeks.
There absolutely are a lot of steps and a lot of things behind the scenes that have to happen for town meeting to happen. And that's notification, there are timelines that you have to follow. And one of the things that's also going to happen on June 13th is the Moderator Trifletti is going to be having a town meeting preview and a presentation night. So he'll be doing that remotely as well. That will be at PAC TV, and we will be able to have that information available to folks in the next week or two, what time they can watch.
Yeah, that's great. Again, this all goes towards trying to educate our new town meeting members and our old town meeting members. A lot of them, are going to continue to do the good work that they do, but just trying to get them educated and understand the issues as quickly as possible, because that's all going to take place on June 13th. Less than 8 days later, we're going to be having to take those votes, again, virtually, as I don't think we've mentioned that just yet, but there was a vote taken by the board last week. Moderator Trifletti came to the board. He had made a recommendation that the select board have the special town meeting on June 21st held virtually. The board deliberated and discussed that. There were some board members, I think, thought that it's time to get back into the auditorium and start to have those conversations in person. But the majority of the board felt that, given, again, everything that was going on, a little bit with COVID, but with the fact that the moderator actually has, under the statutes, has authority to delay a town meeting by 30 days. And so, given his recommendation, the board did not want to take the risk that the moderator would delay it by 30 days. And the reason is because of municipal finance law. And again, so some folks say, well, geez, what's a 30-day delay? Well, it's a lot because municipal finance law prevents us from using some of our free cash, which is kind of like a checking account for the town, after June 30th. So, which is why June 21st is kind of a hard and fast date to have the special town meeting, so we can then appropriate those funds if they're approved at town meeting. So anything beyond June 30th, we wouldn't be able to use those dollars.
Okay, so it is important that the meeting has to be done prior to July 1st.
Yes, right. Okay. And that's, again, we often get folks say, why aren't you doing it this way? Why aren't you doing it that way? And there's usually reasons why. We have open meeting law, we have public records law we have to abide by, we have procurement law that, the rules and regulations around acquiring property, municipal finance law that says when you can spend money, when you can't spend money. So there are a lot, our left and right limits are really, really small. So it kind of boxes us into why we have to make the decisions that we make.
And, I find this show fascinating for myself because in just a few short weeks, even being, somebody who watches a lot of what happens in town government, I learn a lot every time. So I really appreciate, the background information about how these decisions are made.
Yeah, no, and it's complex too. So, most of our community have worked in the private sector their entire lives, and, they don't have to abide by all these different rules and regulations that we are bound to as a municipal organization. So once you explain that, I think people scratch their head and like, really, those are things you have to deal with? And we're like, yeah, that's our world, so, but without any context behind why we make the decisions we make, sometimes it even seems foolish, why we do the things that we do. But
it seems cumbersome, but it's because you're following very specific guidelines and checks and balances.
That's right,
okay.
Right, exactly.
All right. Now, so special town meeting coming up on the 21st, and you talked about it being virtual. But part of the reason, not all of the reason, but part of the recommendation was a result of some of the COVID numbers increasing. How are we doing in Plymouth? And I'm not looking for hard and fast numbers, of course, but all of the communities in the South Shore are increasing. They're telling us the wastewater is still increasing. The numbers up closer to Boston. What are you hearing at Town Hall right now?
Yeah, so the chairman of the Board of Health, Barry Potvin, he had sent out a slide deck just to give us all like an update. This was about a week ago on the current case count. And unfortunately, we're starting to see a rise in new infections in the community. I think the population may shifted a little bit, but we are starting to see an increase. There was a conversation with the Board of Health of whether or not we should start to consider another mask mandate. But I think the Board of Health kind of popped the brakes a little bit and said, listen, let's not have a knee-jerk reaction just because of the past 2 weeks. Let's watch this over time, see where the trends are heading, and then we'll have more data, more information before we make those types of decisions.
And they're meeting again this week. The Board of Health meets every other week in Plymouth on
Yes.
Wednesdays at 4 o'clock.
Right, they meet and they're a great Board of Health, and they've been, you got to give it to them. They've been very busy Board of Health the last 2 years, and so we all look to the Board of Health to give us, good, sound public health policy recommendations and guidance. So, again, we make a lot of our decisions based upon some of their analytics.
And they also, their agendas and all of the information that they have are available on the town website. So people can check that regularly if they want to see what's coming up for discussion at a Board of Health meeting. Those agendas are usually available at least a week in advance.
And all of the Board of Health meetings are virtual. So again, having these virtual platform makes civic engagement a little bit easier. So you don't have to get in your vehicle and drive to Town Hall to be a participant in any one of our meetings. So the Board of Health has been holding them. So again, folks that are interested in their discussions and what they're talking about COVID, you can just dial in from home and listen in and even participate.
Absolutely. And they're also, those meetings are streamed live online on Facebook, on YouTube as well. So people can go to the town website, to the PAC TV website to get information. They can literally watch it from wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're interested. Also, we should probably mention mass.gov/COVID. In addition to going to the town website, the state website has a lot of information, including Plymouth County and Plymouth specifically. Numbers, trends, and also where people can get vaccinations, where they can get boosters. So there's a lot available information for residents.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because that's kind of a central repository of all things COVID related at the mass.gov website. But you brought up the fact that just getting vaccinated. There was the Board of Health had sponsored a clinic this past Saturday at the Memorial Hall parking lot. They had a Mass DPH brought down a mobile clinic, and they were vaccinating folks in the parking lot, whoever wanted to get their initial dose or a booster.
Great.
So those are the types of things I think we have to do a better job communicating, those services back to the community so they know that when and if they're available.
That's great. Now, are there still tests available at Town Hall if people need them?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So if you go to the health department, it's on the lower level at Town Hall. There's actually a big sign right outside the office that said, testing kits are available. So you can go in there, get a free testing kit. The town purchased them using ARPA dollars about 6-7 months ago. So again, I know a lot of folks, they'll go to CVS to buy them, but we have them free of charge at Town Hall.
It's a great service. Now, moving on, what are some of the other issues you want to give people updates on this week? I know there's some announcements. We're heading into summer with Memorial Day. People finally got that first breath of warm air this weekend, so I think everybody's getting excited.
Yeah. So this was a very hot past weekend, right? And a lot of folks, I know they went immediately to the beaches, and so, which is great. That's why we have our beaches, our public spaces for, but it's early in the season. And so I just want folks to understand, we've talked about this with the board the past 2 weeks, just to remind folks publicly that our beaches aren't staffed right now.
Okay.
And what I mean by staffed is, we don't have the seasonal park staff available. We don't have our seasonal lifeguards available. However, that's going to change just a little bit. So this coming weekend, Memorial Day weekend is going to be in front of us. So we will start staffing Morton Park and Plymouth Beach as well. So at those starting this Memorial Day weekend, we'll have lifeguards and seasonal park staff at Morton Park and at Plymouth Beach. And we'll continue to carry that staffing just on weekends until towards the end of the month of June. Right after school ends, we start staffing all of our beaches 7 days a week. But again, I like to say that, and I like to say it as much as possible because, at this time it's kind of swim at your own risk. Because we don't have the beaches staffed. And so I just want folks to be aware of that, especially if you have teenage children that are going to the beach, just know they're not staffed full-time just yet.
Are the restrooms open yet?
So the restrooms at Town Hall are open.
Okay.
Yep. So that's a great question. So we had funding, about $40,000 in place to open up the restrooms at Town Hall to the public. And that basically was going to begin right around May 20th, and that was going to carry us until the September 9th time period, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I had the opportunity to work with the chair of VSB, Steve Layden. He then worked with his colleagues on the Visitor Service Bureau board, and they were able to get us an additional $10,000 to open up the restrooms. So because of their $10,000 donation to the town, we opened up the bathrooms immediately. So they've been open since the end of April.
Great.
We're going to carry the bathrooms open until at least Thanksgiving. We know we have a number of events that happen during the weekends in the month of December. So our goal is to at least carry the bathrooms open through the month of December. And again, we would not have been able to do that if it wasn't the support of the Visitor Service Board. And
downtown, funding that the town has been able to access, and including through the Visitor Services Board, you can really see, it's springtime and summer coming, and the bump outs outside of the restaurants are looking wonderful. It really is looking fantastic down there.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up because I had the opportunity. I had to spend the week last week in Boston, and so I took a stroll over to Hanover Street in the North End, which is, has received a lot of publicity last month because of the $7,000 fee it cost them. And if you look at their bump outs, Plymouth's are far and away much more attractive. They basically have Jersey barriers for their bump outs. So a lot of things goes to the outdoor dining committee that put together the plan that we have, because it does really, they look fantastic. I drove down Main Street today, and they just look so great.
Yeah, it definitely does attract you and want you to dine outside.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So especially compared to what they did in Boston. So, I'm really happy what they did.
Now, tell us, there's also, we're coming up on a deadline for an option, the Great American Rain Barrel, that's being offered to residents. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, so through the Department of Public Works, the town does this every year. They're trying to encourage folks to acquire rain barrels. And so, especially, we've had these conversations in the community about our water supply. And so, especially during some of the hotter weather months, we will tell folks they cannot use their water for irrigation of their lawns.
Has that started yet in Plymouth?
It has not started just yet. But the rain barrel program helps us conserve water. So if you can buy a rain barrel, you can attach it to your gutters, so you're capturing the rainwater, and then you can use this rainwater. You can use it to irrigate your gardens. You can use it to irrigate your front lawn. So these are our approach to conserve our drinking water supply for its primary purpose, but at the same time, it's kind of a more green approach to try to just like protect the environment. So folks can go on the town's website. There's actually another URL, the greatamericanbarrel.com, that folks can go to. They can sign up. They have to place their order by, I believe it's June 9th.
I think so.
June 9th is their deadline, and then they can pick them up on Camelot Drive on Saturday, June 18th, their rain barrels. And so, when you think about how much water you can conserve, they're only $79 a barrel. So it's actually a really good deal.
Now, as I said, I think we're also excited after the warm weekend that summer is finally here. And we only have a few minutes left in the show. Are there any other updates you want to give to residents, things that are happening as we head into summer, any things opening, any new changes this year? I definitely feel the sense of people wanting to be downtown and on the waterfront and feeling very comfortable being outside and excited.
Well, I think what folks are going to notice this year on the waterfront, I mean, there's a lot of changes, but if you just look at the harbor, the new floats are have been placed in the harbor. Work on the harbor master's office and the harbor committee. There's what they're calling now charter boat row. You're going to see more charter boats right in the front when you first walk off of Water Street. So you see that change, and then we're finally completing the project over by Woods Seafood. That area over there, we had to put in new piles in order to fix the decking over there. So that'll then allow us to reconnect the little walkway over there that was temporarily dismantled. So you'll see some of those changes in very short order. But I'm looking forward to the summer because there's a lot of good things that are happening.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great summer. People are really energized, I think. And even though numbers are up and down, there are definitely trends. I think we're starting to get more comfortable with managing COVID, living in the times of COVID and still being able to enjoy our community and our families.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we have to start to normalize it. I don't think COVID's ever going away. I think it's something that we're going to have to learn to live with our environment and take precautions as necessary, but at some point we have to get back to enjoying being outside and being on the waterfront and being on the water. So those are the things I'm looking forward to.
And we're in a beautiful community to do it.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you for joining us again. We really appreciate your time for This Week in Plymouth. And if folks have comments, questions, topics they'd like you to cover, what would you like them to do?
Yeah, please shoot an email. So my email is dbrindisi, so DBRINDISI at Plymouth. -ma.gov. So I want to make sure I got that right. So please email me. I honestly, I've had folks email me and say, hey, things are going well. We love your show. But nobody's sent any emails of seeking information. So please, whatever questions you have, shoot me an email and we'll talk about it next week's show.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank
you for watching. We hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you again next week on This Week in Plymouth.